Welcome to episode 1 of Homestead Homies. My friend Casey bought a house. This is the house. It was built in 1958 and it needs a lot of work. And by a lot of work, I mean we're going to tear everything out and start over. But before we do, I wanted to give you guys a little glimpse at what it looked like before we started tearing the walls out. Fun fact, Casey actually grew up across the street, so he spent his childhood playing in this backyard. We started with the living room. The carpet smelled, I don't even know how to describe it to you, but not good. I'm pretty sure there was smoking in this house. I was clapping at Casey because yay, the first thing that we're tearing out. Yeah, it needed to go. And it convinced me never, ever, ever to put carpet in my house. Now, while Casey and I were putting some legwork into the living room and dining room areas, his business partner, John, who is such a sweetheart for helping us out, he was taking off all of the doors, and Casey tried to get this door off, but you had to take off the trim to get the door out. So, side quest, curtains. This house, I don't think, has been updated since, 1973. So, these curtains were quite old. And underneath the flooring, we found hardwood, which is good news and bad news because I don't know if we can keep it. But press on, we must. Like I said, John was working off taking all the doors and door frames out. And once we got the carpet out of here, it looked like a completely different room. We found some really old newspaper with a car for sale for $3,900, a brand new car. Then I got to working the staples out of the floor. In this house, we love Benson Boone. I was struggling so hard to get these staples out of the floor. And we ended up making a really efficient system where Casey pulled up all of the staples with the flathead screwdriver, and I took the wrench and pulled them out. But in the meantime, while I was struggling, Casey was tearing up all of the wood and nail heads that hold down the carpet, and he was doing such a fabulous job. And this is all still day 1. We got the keys on Thursday. This was Friday. I can't believe how much we got done in the first day. And we tried to keep up with cleaning and putting things in garbage bags because we were hauling everything on a trailer. Here's a complete before and after day 1 of the living room and dining room areas. Rocky is the biggest helper in the world and he needed a nap after the first day. Day 2, we started getting into the kitchen more. Here's a before picture. You can see that big, what was a bar, I think it looks like a table that was bolted into the ceiling. Quite a big eyesore, so we started with that. At first we were going to try to take the bolts out, but Casey got into the attic and he said, "No way, Jose." So he just ended up cutting it down. Casey's brother-in-law, Talon, came to help and he put in the work. He was such a huge help. They got back into the living room and dining room areas and tried to get all the trim and all of those built-ins out. But it turns out with that one in the dining room area, it was really built in there, and they were going to try to take it out in one piece so we could reuse it in a different place, but we're just going to have to take it apart because it wasn't going to come out like that. So they moved on to taking more drywall out. Then when they saw that they had to take the cabinetry out of the kitchen in order to get the other side of that drywall out, they ran into some obstacles because also built-ins, also one giant piece. Good job, boys. Then they moved on to the bathroom. So not this cabinet, but the one that Casey's about to take out was actually a window at one point. They extended the house, and so in that room and then also the purple room, the shelving that they built in was to cover up a window. There's a lot of stuff about this house that we had questions about, and at one point we just had to stop asking questions because we weren't going to find answers. We don't know for sure where all of the load-bearing walls are. We know that they run along the length of the house because the boys went up there at separate points to look to see if they could find them. That's still, the jury's out on that, but we've made some educated guesses, and so far so good. So we've just been kind of working to take the drywall out until we know which struts we can take out, because there's this giant closet right there that's in the middle of the house that holds the staircase down to the basement as well, and we want to move that along with the stairs, but we don't know if we can. So here we are. More questions than answers at this point. Casey was knocking down this drywall to see if there was anything in the cavity above the staircase, and would you believe it? There's not. But knocking out drywall is really fun, especially when you do what Talon is doing, literally ripping it out. Although it is way harder to clean it up that way. So what Casey's been doing, and I think you've seen it in previous clips, is using the Sawzall to cut it out in strips. And then you can tug it out in bigger chunks. They're literally kicking a 2x4 that's holding up the staircase, so they had to stop and move on. Casey went to the current master and started taking out walls. Now we know none of these are load bearing, so he was actually able to take out the struts. And I asked him, how do you know where to go in with the Sawzall without hitting struts? And he said, educated guess. Casey does HVAC work for a living, and he has remodeled his own apartment that he owns. So he knows that you can go, like, struts are every, I think he said, I can't remember if it's 16 or 18 inches. And most of the time, things like outlets and light switches are on struts. So if you go 16 to 18 inches off of that, you know, you probably won't hit one. Now, up to this point, we were filming vertically because okay, Silly May didn't know that you could turn the stand sideways so that you could film horizontally. So if you want to see what this looks like vertically, hop on over to TikTok. You can look at May Diddy. All of our stuff will be on there. And then on Instagram, you can also watch our reels, which will be a lot of similar content. On Homestead Homies, it's home.stead.homies on Instagram. Go check it out. Based on the lighting change, this is day 3, and we continued to take the drywall out of this whole section of the house to see what we have. And I think you can see in the back there where the 2x4, or not 2x4s, where the old struts are sitting through that window, which actually makes it easier to get stuff outside. But again, at this point, we didn't have a dumpster yet, and we are going to keep those to reuse as much as we can. But as far as the drywall and all that, we just had to set it up against the wall until we could get the dumpster, which came as I'm recording this voiceover 3 days after this was being recorded. Oh, look, there's me! Watching this back, it looks like the Three Stooges just creating chaos, and luckily nobody's been hit in the head with a plank of wood yet. Hopefully it stays that way. We still don't know if this is a load-bearing wall or not, so Casey and I had a little convo about what to do next, and we decided to just stop for that day and move on tomorrow, which is this day, day 4, and I got the trim out of that doorway all by myself, so proud, and then I started tearing up the linoleum, and I hit this one part of the floor that Casey said there used to be a wall there, which is crazy to me, that it was even more closed off. But it was glued down so hard I couldn't get the linoleum off in one piece. So I did the rest and then came back to that one part. As you can see, I was really frustrated, but I did end up getting it up after some time. While I was working on that, Casey was working on shutting out the plumbing to the kitchen so we could get that sink out of there. Similar to the cabinets that existed above this part, it was all built in one piece, and Casey was having a really hard time getting that countertop off there, and I was like, why don't you just cut it? And so he did, and then we could take it out in smaller pieces, which made it quite a bit easier. We are going to keep that sink. It's super huge and super cool, and we're either going to use it in one of our guest spaces or in the basement. We're actually in Casey's workshop, I think was the plan. I don't remember. I had to leave pretty shortly after this, so I just let Casey handle the brunt of the work. The wall had opened up at some point and insulation got filled in behind this one cabinet that Casey's about to drag out. So we had to clean up that, which was really weird. Again, more questions than answers at this point. But he did end up getting all of that cabinetry out of there and then paused for the day. Okay, so day 5, I started off in the bathroom trying to get out all the hardware that I could. I got this vanity mirror to nowhere down. I thought there was going to be like a medicine cabinet behind there. No, it was just to look at the back of your hair. And same thing with this wall. There was so many mirrors in this bathroom. It was kind of concerning. And then I couldn't get this out by myself, but thank God Talon came to help me out. And he got it down very quickly. And then he started working on the shower. And a lot of those parts came out in big pieces, which was nice. And then we just got right to tearing out the drywall. Angle switch up. I thought it would be kind of like The Shining. So did Talon to get it from this angle. Happy Halloween, everybody. Welcome to October. And if anything is scary, it's this house and this process. Renovating is no small undertaking. And filming the process has a huge learning curve. So thanks for sticking with us through this. Talon took down this giant, I don't even know what that is. It just makes the room smaller. But while he did that, Casey and I took out some more drywall. Talon went up to the attic to see if he could figure out where the load-bearing walls are, and all we know is that it's somewhere in the middle of the house. So any walls on the side like this are safe to take down. So we made the beginnings of that, and then I think it got to be around lunchtime and we all took a nice little break for the day. I never thought that we could get so much done in 5 days of demo. And like I said, we're trying to keep all of the wood and stuff that we could possibly reuse because I want this house to be as sustainable as possible. Rounding out the end of day 5, we finally got this wall out, and man, does it make a difference. And then I tried to clean stuff and Casey was like, dude, we don't have a dumpster. So we said that's good for the day and went over to the hot tub next door at his parents' house, where we will be staying until our house is done. Thanks for watching, and please come back next week for episode 2.